when you start going to therapy at that young age, when you start getting exposed to this, when do you start to feel like you're gaining tools, clarity, insight that you're like, oh, I can cope with this? Because it sounds like from what we were talking about, it's not something that ever goes away. It's not something that ever just disappears, but you start coping better, you start managing it better. Is that accurate? Or
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the therapy was a really beautiful, for 1 hour a week, I was talking to someone who just got it. She was an older woman. I instantly really loved her and connected with her. I still felt like it wasn't okay for me to be feeling what I was feeling, like it wasn't justified, and maybe I would be looked at as crazy. So I remember even in my therapy sessions would be like, oh God, my allergies are so bad, as I had tears streaming down my face. I'm like, girl, you're in a therapy office. You're allowed to cry. And it's interesting, like the messaging from when I was a kid to what it is now is so radically different compared to even, 20 years ago. How insane. But even just from when I was a kid I feel like you heard the term, don't cry. You don't need to cry. Crying is the most beautiful thing you can do. I encourage people to cry. I cry all the time. And I think it's the most healthy expression of how you're feeling. And I sometimes wish I just could have been told, you can cry. There's no shame in that. There's no shame in how you're feeling. And also, you don't need to always be justifying it, because I think I was constantly trying to come up with reasons why, rather than just being accepted for what it was. I have anxiety. I have depression. Okay, but why? Well, sometimes there isn't. And navigating that space when I was so young and trying to defend myself, having my first panic attacks and not knowing what this feeling was, how I could escape it, what resources I had. I was too young to really be going on the internet looking for help elsewhere. I just really had like my parents and I guess the kids around me at school who had no idea what to tell me or how to help. My friends at the time, it's not like they got it. They just didn't. So I was so isolated, and I'm happy that now this is a space we're moving into where we are saying, feel your feelings, and that they're justified. You don't need to defend yourself. I'm like, damn, that's the kind of environment I want to raise my future kids in, to where it is a beautiful thing to cry, and you're allowed to feel. You're just allowed to feel.
If everyone would just listen to that over and over and over and over and over again every day, like our lives would be so much better, because telling someone not to cry is like telling someone not to laugh.
The worst advice.
Right?
It's the worst advice.
It's such bad advice. And because, like telling someone not to cry is like telling someone not to laugh.
Not
it's
to
like
feel.
There's a natural expression that needs to be released
Yep.
in order to feel an emotion.
Yep.
And you're being told to block it and not feel it. You would never do that with any other emotion. But when it comes to crying, and especially as a man too, that's a big part of how boys are raised.
Boys don't cry.
Boys don't cry.
Right.
And boys never cry. And, you'll be fine. You're okay. There's nothing wrong. And so it's like, oh, if I cry, that means there's something wrong. And that association of crying is bad is actually the biggest issue.
So toxic.
Yeah, it's so toxic that crying becomes a negative emotion.
Yeah.
So now when I cry, I feel sad, even if crying was going to actually make me feel better.
Which it does,
usually.
It
does, yeah.
Yeah.
And we cry when there's happy tears too.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's a release.
Yes.
And there are so many things that need to be released from the body, the mind, the heart, and everything you just said. I wish everyone would just listen to that part again and again and again and play it to their children and play it to their family members, because if that's all you take out from this conversation, it will change your life. And I know there's so many more, but that was truly, truly powerful. Oh, sorry, go on.
No. I mean, I just to kind of go deeper into that,
please.
I feel the last 2 years have been a very large spiritual awakening for me. Really became awakened to the spiritual side of life and really what wellness means. And I thought I knew who I was before and was confident, but really so much of my identity was based off of pleasing other people and putting my identity in other people's hands. And the concept, I read a lot of self-help books, did a deep discovery on all those things. And the biggest takeaway I was gathering was how vital it is to sit with your feelings and experience them, which again just goes along the concept of don't cry. You're pushing it away rather than doing the opposite, which is how you heal. I was on a very big healing journey 2 years ago, which is how this all really started. And the biggest thing I kept reading was feel your feelings, sit there and let the feeling be in your body, let it flow through you, observe it, don't judge it, let it happen as it needs to happen, let it flow through you. And so that's what I did.